to you all, and happy Halloween once again here on the Big Daddy D Reviews. Now, for this Halloween, I'm going to take a look at something a little bit special. I'm going to take a look at the Dawn of the Dead Ultimate Edition. Now, this was very kindly donated to me, given to me I should say, by a good friend of mine, Pete Trigg, who I met at the Leeds Zombie Film Festival. Now, we've been going there, we sort of met there for the first time at the very first one. We've been going to, well, we've met each other at every other zombie film festival since then. There's been 5 in total. And Pete has recently been updating all these horror and zombie related DVDs onto Blu-ray. So naturally he wanted to get rid of his DVDs, but he wanted to make sure they went to a good home. So he very kindly gave me not only this, the Ultimate Edition of Dawn of the Dead, but he also gave me Pontypool as well, which is a fantastic zombie movie and well worth checking out. Now then, what I'm going to do, first of all, there's going to be a review of the actual Dawn of the Dead movie itself, and that's going to be followed by taking a look at the actual box set itself. So, first of all, let's roll the footage of the review. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. It follows on quite nicely from Night of the Living Dead, although it isn't really required that you watch that one first. It quickly becomes apparent that there's never grown epidemic of zombies rising from the dead all over the place and walking around the cities and countrysides to find some warm human flesh to snack on. Amid all this chaos, 2 Philadelphia SWAT team members, a traffic reporter and his television executive girlfriend take refuge in a secluded shopping mall. From there, it centres around these 4 people and their attempts to live a life as normally as possible in a world plagued by the living dead. After ridding the mall of its brain-dead consumers and barricading themselves in with a couple of trucks, the 4 characters then set up a homestead surrounded by all the things that they're going to need for quite a while, from food to firearms. In this world gone mad, food, fuel and water are now in short supply. But what is really getting on the nerves of our intrepid team of 4 heroes is that they can't find any cigarettes! Ah! Hey, now's a good time as any to quit, don't you think? However, one of the SWAT team guys, Roger, then begins to slowly succumb to the wounds he suffered during a zombie attack, and eventually becomes one of the undead himself. Or is it the Grinch? It's hard to tell really. Either way, he needs to die! After giving zombie Grinch Roger a quick death by headshot, we then watch the 3 remaining characters struggling to cope with life as it now is.
The word implies an interspecies activity. These creatures cannot be considered human. They prey on humans. They do not prey on each other. That's the difference. They attack and they feed only on warm human flesh. Intelligence, seemingly little or no reasoning power, but basic skills remain are more remembered behaviors from normal life. There are reports of these creatures using tools. But even these actions are the most primitive. The use of external articles as bludgeons and so forth. I might point out to you that even animals will adopt the basic use of tools in this manner. These creatures are nothing but pure, motorized instinct. We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends.
They are fortunate enough to have the luxury of safety in a crumbling world, but they're unhappy. But before the cabin fever can work any permanent damage, a gang of bikers turn up to the mall and things start to get interesting again real damn quick. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead was the first real chiller of the zombie genre, but when he made Dawn of the Dead several years later, it completely redefined the genre itself. If all other zombie movies were, say, Burt Whedon, the Dawn of the Dead was the Jimi Hendrix that blew them all away, or rather, gnawed at their bones. Nom 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 nom. The film contains some truly gripping moments. Steve's losing battle with a group of zombies in the elevator, leading to his own zombification, springs to mind. Being trapped in a small place full of people who want to eat you up can't be much fun. No, sir. However, it does have its funny moments too, believe it or not. You can never really get enough of watching zombies struggle to walk on an escalator, or taking a custard pie to the face. And those blood pressure monitors are a death trap. Some of the special makeup effects seem a little inconsistent from zombie to zombie, although some zombies do look suitably horrific. Others just look like they've had some green or grey face paint slapped on. Also, some of the blood looks a little too bright red to be considered realistic. However, a lot of the scenes where the zombies are pulling their victims apart like some sort of delicious Chinese pork dish still look just as gruesome today. The special effects were created by makeup maestro Tom Savini, who also did a lot of the stunts and even has a part of the lead of the biker gang too. The zombified version of this character also shows up in Land of the Dead, shot several years later. In fact, Savini's zombie and gore effects were so effective here, it would get him more and more work in Hollywood, including Friday the 13th. And it would actually take another 7 years for him to top his work here, when he reunited with Romero again to do Day of the Dead. But in Dawn of the Dead, we get to see heads explode, we see machetes going through a skull, a screwdriver is plunged into a zombie's brain, lots and lots of goodies. And you never once see him or Romero backing away from it. Dawn of the Dead has been available in many different versions, so there isn't really any way of saying which version is the definitive version. But thankfully, this DVD box set contains not one, not two, but 3 different versions of the movie. In order to review this DVD box set, I've had to watch Dawn of the Dead several times across the various different versions of the film. And let me tell you this, the film never gets old, it never gets tired, I never get sick of it. There's so much to take in and digest. Romero, never fond of being pigeonholed, makes a film that works as a horror film, an action-adventure movie, a satire on consumerism, and as a human tragedy. The booklet inside is made to look like the floor plan of the shopping mall, which is a nice touch, and there's also a preview of the Dawn of the Dead comic book, which takes our 4 heroes up to the point where they get to the shopping centre. And as you can see, it doesn't exactly skim on the blood and gore. The Ultimate Edition is spread over 4 discs. Disc 1 contains the Theatrical Cut, Disc 2 has the Extended Director's Cut, and Disc 3 contains Dario Argento's European cut of the film, whilst Disc 4 contains a boatload of documentaries and other bits and pieces.
We got this, man. We got this by the ass.
So, on to Disc 1, which contains the original theatrical version, running at 127 minutes. There's also a selection of the film's various different trailers, along with television and radio spots, and a good text biography of Romero. The commentary track on Disc 1 is Romero himself, along with his wife, Chris, and makeup artist Tom Savini. They discuss the film itself at the beginning, mostly, but as the track progresses they start wandering off onto other topics, like the fame of the film and the possibility of a 4th Dead movie. Yes, this was actually recorded before Land of the Dead was even announced. For many fans, this is the definitive version of the movie, but we've got 2 more versions of the film to go through. So let's go on to Disc 2, which is the Director's Cut version, running in at a whopping 139 minutes. However, don't be fooled by that particular title. Romero goes as far to state in his commentary on Disc 1 that the theatrical version is his preferred vision of the film. This longer version is the one that was hastily thrown together in order to be shown at the Cannes Film Festival. Romero's later recutting of it reflected his more artistic preferences. When you watch all the extra footage in the director's cut, you can really see why it was cut out in the first place. It does make the pacing of the film not quite as smooth as the theatrical version. However, this still makes for an interesting experience and is definitely worth watching at least a couple of times. This is the version that the die-hard fans of Dawn of the Dead will want to see if they simply have to see every available piece of footage of the movie. The commentary isn't as much fun though, as the Dawn of the Dead producer, Richard Rubinstein, seems to have a difficult time remembering some of the details behind the making of the film. He also doesn't seem to be very fond of Dario Argento's cut of the movie either. But let's not let Rubinstein put us off, as we go on to Disc 3, which contains the European version, running at 117 minutes, the shortest version of the lot. The reason why there was a completely separate European version is because Italian film director and producer of this movie, Dario Argento, agreed to put up half the budget in exchange for distribution rights in non-English speaking countries. This then led to his own version of the film, which was dramatically recut. If I'm being honest, I actually watched this version of the film first, as I'd never seen it before. It's weird, but here, it feels almost like a different film. Argento didn't seem to be particularly interested in the range of genre types that Romero's version covered. This version seems to run at a much faster pace than the others, and it definitely has more emphasis on action. Although bizarrely for such an action-packed edit, Argento's Dawn actually cuts out a lot of the major action and gore sequences, including the infamous helicopter zombie. This version of the film also changes a lot of the music soundtrack, which really alters the overall tone. This version is probably not the version I would show to someone watching Dawn of the Dead for the first time, to be honest. This version of the film was known as Zombie in Europe, and it was so successful that a sequel was made to this. No, not Day of the Dead, but Zombie 2. That's right, a sequel to a sequel that then spawned another series of sequels. What? When Zombie 2 came out in America, they couldn't call it Zombie 2 because Zombie 1 was in fact Dawn of the Dead. They couldn't really call it Dawn of the Dead 2 because it wasn't really a sequel to that film. So instead they just called it Zombie. Yep, that's right. The exact same film was known as Zombie and as Zombie 2. Huh? We tried to make it a little less confusing over here in Blighty because we called it Zombie Flesh Eaters. Don't get me started with Zombie Free though, as there's so many different films out there all claiming to be zombie free, they just start to get confusing after a while. The extras on disc 3 are pretty much the international versions of the disc 1 extras. They are trailers from all around the world, including Italy and Germany, and even a Dario Argento bio too. Bizarrely enough, the cast commentary, which reunites the 4 lead actors together for the first time in years, are on the European version of the film. It's obvious that none of them are particularly familiar with this version of the movie, as several times they'll start talking excitedly about a favourite scene that then never shows up, because it was cut out of the movie. Maybe it would have been better having the cast talking over the director's cut version. Ah well. On the plus side, this is by far the most entertaining and enjoyable commentary across all 3 discs, in my opinion. It is funny to hear Ken Foley joking about his weight gain in the years since this film was shot, not to mention that the 4 leads all take the piss out of their own characters and each other's. In particular Flyboy, and all the tremendous fuck-ups that his character makes. Now, you may think that I wasn't particularly keen about the European version, but that, my friends, couldn't be any further from the truth. In fact, I would say that if you needed just one reason to buy this DVD box set, then the European cut would be it. It has its own charm and identity that deserves to be re-watched over and over again. With the 3 versions together, you have a movie to watch no matter what your mood. People looking for something that charges ahead, fast-paced and relentless, will find that the European version will fit that bill. And finally, we come on to Disc 4, which is packed with documentaries. The first one is the brand new The Dead Will Walk documentary, which features interviews with nearly everybody involved with the project, right down to some of the various different zombies. Although producer Richard Rubinstein is conspicuous by his absence here. This is a really fascinating look at the project from its origins, and it really kind of encapsulates the Dawn experience. There is some repeated information from the commentary on the first disc, in particular Tom Savini, who, what he says here is virtually a carbon copy of what he said in the commentary. These are obviously stories he's told before, and often. But for the most part, it's a lot of fun to watch, and very informative. Document of the Dead is another documentary well worth a watch. However, the tour of the mall turned out to be a bit of a disappointment, to be honest, as it's all shot on a handheld camcorder, and the man behind the camera gets rather annoying after a while. However, it is a warm reunion for the cast and crew, and it is funny when the escalator zombie goes up there again for old time's sake. What's interesting to note is that filming in the mall actually started around 10 PM, right after the mall closed. Filming would then go into the night and would finish at 6 AM. That wasn't because the mall opened, it actually didn't open until 9 AM. But the reason why filming had to finish was because the mall's background music would then turn back on, the Muzak, and nobody knew how to turn it off again. Not only that, but they also had to stop filming in the mall altogether during Christmas time because of all the Christmas decorations that had been put up. Naturally, this would have been a continuity nightmare if all these had suddenly shown up in the film, and it also would have been far too time consuming to take them all down and put them all back up again every night. The Dawn of the Dead Ultimate Edition DVD set more than lives up to its title. There's well over 13 hours worth of viewing goodness in this package. Even more if you watch the films again with the commentary over the top.
In this world that we live in, we work, we consume, we die.
but in the zombies' case, they continue to consume even after they have died. And not just in a flesh-eating sense either. The fact that they have returned to the state they were before zombification. Indeed, seeing the zombies wandering around the mall, they really are engaged in no different behaviour than what they did when they were already human. In short, there's not much in comparison between the people who walk around shopping malls and the undead. But it does make one wonder, as we humankind continue to hunt down every other species into extinction, and not only to genetically modify and factory farm other species, we are essentially creating one uniform species, mainly humankind. Eventually, there'll be nothing left on the planet to eat but people. Now, I don't know if this is what George A. Romero had planned when he was making his zombie series, in particular Dawn of the Dead. But can you imagine a future where you have hundreds turn into thousands, turn into tens of thousands, turn into millions of flesh-eating cannibalistic zombies, hunting down mankind in an orgy of cannibalistic consumerism? Very alluring indeed. Dawn of the Dead, the Ultimate Edition, gets a resounding 2 thumbs up from the Big Daddy D. God, what a depressing way to finish this review. There's only one thing that's going to cheer me up: monkeys. Oh, there's another one over there.